Well, here we go. Welcome to the Mail panel. Gareth Ward can't be with us. He's on ministerial duty and out of range. It is amazing, though, isn't it, how many Australians don't have mobile phone access. Perhaps we should look at this universal service obligation. But anyway, in his stead, David Elliott, the New South Wales Minister for Police and Emergency Services. He's represented the seat of Baulkham Hill since 2011, a graduate of the University of New England and the University of Western Sydney and the Royal Military College in Dundroon. He served in the Australian Army. He was part of the Bougainville peacekeeping operation in Papua New Guinea, for which he was awarded the Australian Service Medal. Joined by Chris Minns. Chris Minns, a refreshingly new face in the New South Wales Labor Party, the member for Cogra since 2015. So here we go, boys. Now, just a quick one firstly to you both. Chris, you first. You're both university educated. How do we promote, though, the opportunities that are available to young people by getting a skill, by going to TAFE? Chris?
Yeah, well, vocational education is so important, Alan. It's a skill that can transfer. You can get your labour and move it to areas where there's opportunities. It's something that no one can ever take off you. It's well paid in Australia. Before COVID, if you spoke to developers or builders in my electorate, they'd say the number one problem they had was having skilled labour. It was driving up labour costs that were being passed on to consumers. There's been 170,000 people reduction in TAFE numbers over the last decade. It's a huge problem. I think the German model's the best, where you cross-subsidise vocational education, you have low tariffs, but it's easy to retrain, and we invest in that vocational side of our education system.
Well, let me just say to your Labor Party friends out there, Chris Minns has no idea of the questions I'm going to ask him tonight. That's an outstanding answer. David Elliott, come in there. TAFE, very quick one.
Well, Alan, I had my gap year on the tools, and I tell you what, there's been some times in the last 12 months I wish I'd stayed there. But I think that what we've got here in New South Wales is the need to influence our kids. There are two things that influence kids, and that's families and Hollywood. And unfortunately, Hollywood has told everybody that it's all about, My Kitchen Rules and Gordon Ramsay. It's not. You've got to start at the bottom. And in the 10 years between the military and the parliament, for me, I ran two industry associations, the hotel industry and the Civil Contractors Federation. Both of them, throughout that decade, had a crisis in getting people into the industry. So we need to tell our parents that you will get a stable and certainly a well-paid, fulfilling job if you go to TAFE. And, of course, we've got to make sure the kids know what they're getting into. You can't start out into a trade and expect to be the foreman on a construction site. OK, well, that's good comment. Now, look, you're the Minister for Bushfires, and there's a 400-page report that's gone to Cabinet. You've seen it. And it says climate change as a result of increased greenhouse gas emissions clearly played a role in conditions that led to the fires and in the unrelenting conditions that supported the fires to spread. Now, can I ask you, David Elliott, do you actually think that the people down there that have lost their homes and have lost everything are going to cop that kind of rubbish? No, they won't, Alan, because they see in this report that two things caused the tragic bushfires of 2019-20, and that was a massive fuel load-up caused by a prolonged drought, and the vast majority, by a huge amount, was started by lightning. Now, you can't predict where lightning's going to go, and droughts have occurred since biblical times. So I'm going to go away and certainly introduce those recommendations, knowing full well that we're not going to stop drought and we're not going to stop lightning. Well, Chris, if I could come to you, Bjorn Lomborg is regarded as a world authority on climate change, but he doesn't believe this kind of rubbish. He's a world authority. He said, quote, available data suggests it is not possible to detect a link between global warming and fire in Australia today. Can I just ask you, though, as an opposition person, is the government doing enough to actually get the fuel off the floor? You can't have a fire without fuel, can you?
Well, no, you can't. And the report's 400 pages long, so David's got a 2-week head start on the recommendations. They did seem to indicate that they need to revisit burning off fuel loads, particularly around private property. I thought that the O'Kane-Owens report would actually give some guidance to politicians in relation to how much hazard reduction should take place around private properties. It doesn't seem to do that, which is a bit of a head scratcher. But look, there's lots of recommendations in there. The climate change part of it was part of it. So a big part of the recommendations, as you pointed out in your opening address, Alan. So I'm not sure what report the minister was reading, but it seems like his own department's reporting back that it's an issue.
Let me just ask you one question here, both of you. David, we're nearly approaching the bushfire season again. You tell me something, one thing your government has done that means what happened last time has less chance of happening this time. Just one thing they've done.
Well, since April, we've done mitigation in 22,000 hectares of bushland. So that's one thing that we've done. But we've also seen this report, and now I've got the authority by the Cabinet to implement the 76 recommendations. And I've already foreshadowed to both the Cabinet and to the Parliament that I'm not going to be restricted by those 76 recommendations. And if I need to introduce further programs that are going to mitigate the risk to the people of New South Wales, well, I've reserved the right to do that.
OK, Chris, final say to you, what do you think the government has done that is likely to limit in the future the devastation that took place in the past?
Well, I mean, there's 73 recommendations. They've got $40 million to accomplish them. But if you read the report, Alan, it's infrastructure upgrades, new aircraft, more firefighters, putting the National Parks and Wildlife fire managers back on the ground. I don't think $43 million is going to be anywhere near enough money. It's a $100 billion crisis.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to correct that. There were 76 recommendations. 45 million is what I've got already.
Yeah, we need you to get more.
To make sure. Well, we certainly will, and I've already foreshadowed that.
Good on you. Well, I've got to tell you, I'm having the last say here. David, you're the minister. You can't have a fire without fuel. Get rid of the fuel, and we limit the fire. We'll see both of you boys. I don't know whether David's back next week, but see you next week, Chris.
Thanks,
Good to talk to you.